right, everyone. Thanks for joining us here on Atlanta News First Plus. I am First Alert Meteorologist Courteney Jacobazzi. We are going to get you all caught up on the forecast because we do have some changes. And for once, we're not talking about some sort of extra stormy pattern that we're going into. We are finally going to move out of the stormy pattern and into a drier and hotter pattern going into this upcoming week. So today, a first alert weather day for scattered storms, really between about now and 4 p.m. So storms are starting to move in right now to northwest Georgia, and expect them to continue through the early afternoon before your evening commute for any of your evening plans tonight. You're looking good to go on this Juneteenth holiday. So a lot of you probably trying to get out and about this afternoon. Just keep the First Alert Weather app handy. It'll be a good tool to have. Here's a look at the rain and storms moving in, and you'll notice that stronger batch of storms really diving south through Birmingham, Alabama right now, headed towards Tuscaloosa. Our line of storms is becoming a little more broken in northwest Georgia, but over towards Floyd and Chattooga counties, a couple of showers and rumbles of thunder up there, nothing severe. I do expect as this line of storms continues to push south, that broken line of storms in northwest Georgia, I do think it'll get a little more steam because it's going to have the heat of the day to work with, and we will have to watch for an isolated strong to severe storm. So for today, with the rain, we also had some fog this morning. Temperatures will be in the mid-80s. This is going to be the coolest day of the 7-day, also the stormiest day of the 7-day forecast. Going through the next several hours here, we'll watch for, again, that kind of broken line of storms to maybe get a little bit more organized and move through Metro between about noon and 1 p.m. So if you had any lunch plans today, make sure you're moving those indoors. If you had any outdoor activities for the kids planned today, you'll just want to keep your eyes to the skies. These storms are moving at about 30 miles per hour, so you'll just want to give it about a half an hour to an hour, and then you can make your way back outside. You just might need to kind of adjust your timing a little bit with those outdoor plans today. Around 3, 4 o'clock, storms mainly along and south of that I-85 corridor, and by 5 p.m. for the evening commute tonight, for those of you who do have to go to work today, and a lot of you are off for the holiday, we are mostly dry. So we'll drop that first alert weather day by around 5 o'clock tonight. And again, if you have any evening plans tonight, you won't have to worry about rain and storms. Main time frame for Metro today will be between about noon and 4 p.m. when it comes to those storms. And an isolated severe storm can't be completely ruled out with gusty wind, heavy rain, and frequent lightning. A few storms will be possible late tonight up in the mountains, but for the most part, we're not worried about severe weather late tonight. It'll really just be the middle of the day with that daytime heating. Now notice beyond today, no first alert weather days. We are finally changing our tune a little bit. It has just been about storms and rain and storms and rain and first alert weather days. No more first alert weather days to worry about, but we are going to crank up the heat. Tomorrow, the first official day of summer with a high of 91 degrees. And we're going to hold on to the 90s for the rest of the 7-day forecast. As I mentioned, I do want to talk about this. The severe outlook, this is newly updated from the Storm Prediction Center. Level 1 of 5 threat for all of the area. That means isolated severe storms are possible. Not a high-end severe threat today, but damaging wind would be the primary threat. And any severe storms are talking 60-mile-per-hour winds. So some of these storms could definitely pack a punch with the heat of the day. Beyond today, an area of high pressure that usually sits out over the Atlantic Ocean. We call it the Bermuda High. This time of year in the hurricane season, it can actually steer tropical systems, which we are not worried about any tropical activity in the Atlantic right now. But what that high is going to do is start to build across the southeast. Underneath that high pressure, air sinks. When air sinks, it warms, and our heat is definitely going to build. We're looking at highs in the 90s all the way into next week. Tuesday, in fact, our warmest day of the year slated, the high of 96 degrees. Some models even trending warmer than that. Close to the record of 99. It will feel like record heat, feeling more like the triple digits. It's going to feel like summertime, maybe an isolated storm on Tuesday, but overall, we're mostly dry for the next 7 days, outside of maybe an isolated storm Tuesday, maybe a few isolated storms on Wednesday, and those rain chances, models are starting to kind of pull back on. So we could look ahead to over 6 dry consecutive days, which is something we haven't been able to really say for over a month and a half now. So we're trading the storms for the heat. Make sure, of course, that your pets are protected. When it gets this hot outside, their paws don't do well on the concrete. So make sure you're thinking about them. Make sure you're staying plenty hydrated, light, loose clothing, lots of sunscreen, of course, if you're going to spend time outside. All really important things to keep in consideration as we are going into the summer months, especially with now you having plenty more time to head outside without all the storms to worry about. So that's a look at your 7-day forecast. Again, today, storms mainly between about noon and 4 p.m. across Metro with an isolated severe storm possible. Then we'll get rid of the storms and say hello to the heat. All right, I'm going to leave you with the 7-day forecast, and we're going to bring in Atlanta News First Anchor Brooks Baptiste to get you caught up on what's happening across Atlanta.
Hey, thank you so much, Courtney, and thank you all for tuning in and being with us this morning. Happy Juneteenth to everybody who's tuning in and watching today. A lot of you probably have the day off from work. Some of you may even just be, just dealing with chilling out at the house. Or maybe you got lucky. If you don't have the day off from work, at least you got to work from home. That'd be kind of cool, right? So Brooks Baptiste here checking in from the First Alert Desk. Want to get you caught up on some of those stories that we're on top of at this hour. We do have a breaking news update to share with you regarding that shooting that we've been on top of for several hours that happened in DeKalb County overnight. Investigators say a teenager was shot. Atlanta News First Don Shipman has been out there on Glen Ridge Bend for several hours, and he's been working to get new details from investigators.
Investigators say that teen is listed in critical condition at the hospital right now. Neighbors say that they could see the shooting victim in this area right here, and that tracks with what we saw earlier when police were on the scene. We were watching as police placed about a dozen evidence markers in this intersection right on the street. We spotted what appeared to be shell casings. We also saw officers place what appeared to be a handgun in an evidence box. This all happening inside this subdivision with a Lithonia address, but outside city limits. It's located just off of Covington Highway. We talked with a number of neighbors, and one said that they actually heard gunshots, 2 rounds in fact, right around 3 o'clock this morning. Another neighbor said that their Ring doorbell lit up right around the same time, with people asking what those loud noises were outside. Another thing we noticed was that ambulance leaving the scene at one point early this morning. We also saw 2 women being questioned by police and then being placed inside a squad car. One thing I did ask investigators, I asked them if they have anyone in custody, if they've made any arrests, and they say at this point they do not have any arrests. We'll continue to follow this. We're here in DeKalb County. Don Shipman, Atlanta News First.
Don, thank you as always for staying on top of that for us. A Salvadoran journalist living in Georgia is in ICE custody and is waiting to hear when he's going to face a judge. Mario Guevara was arrested during a weekend protest against ICE, and Atlanta News First Sarah Hammond has been staying on top of this story. She has more about what comes next.
His attorneys also tell us they are working to schedule a bond hearing for Mario Guevara to bring him home. He was held in the DeKalb County Jail for 3 days before being released directly into ICE custody early yesterday morning. He was one of 8 people arrested during Saturday's protest on Shamley Tucker Road. Protesters and officers clashed when protesters marched towards the interstate ramp, but police deployed tear gas to disperse the crowd. And now activists want the charges dropped for everyone who was arrested. Guevara was there as a member of the press covering the rally for his Spanish language news outlet, and his attorneys say based on what they can see in the live stream, he was complying with officers but was still placed in handcuffs. And they say they are pushing to schedule a bond hearing as soon as they can.
We used to get them in a day or 2. But now, because of how overwhelmed the system is, how overwhelmed the detention centers are, how overwhelmed the judges are, sometimes it's taken a week or more for them to schedule these bond hearings.
DeKalb CEO Lorraine Cochran-Johnson says she is reviewing the actions of the police during that protest, and activists say they have another protest planned for this Saturday at 2 p.m. in Lawrenceville. Live from ICE headquarters here in Atlanta, Sarah Hammond for Atlanta News First.
All right, Sarah, thanks so much for that. And of course, today is Juneteenth. We've been talking about it. Oftentimes there is a misconception. People think that Juneteenth was truly just when slavery, quote unquote, ended. But if you really want to get technical and go into the specifics of what Juneteenth really means and why we celebrate freedom on a day like today, it is truly when the last slaves learned that they were free, which came a couple years after when most slaves outside of Texas had already been free. But in this day and age, we've got social media, the word can get around, we've got TV, we have all of those things. Of course, back then in the 1800s, that was not a thing. So our Monica Pearson has more on what Juneteenth is really about. She takes us down memory lane.
We get together, we eat, we laugh, we listen to music, we dance, we praise God, we do it all.
A celebration of freedom, resilience, and unity. Juneteenth gets its name from combining June and 19th. It honors the historical significance of June 19, 1865, when federal troops arrived in Galveston, Texas, and informed enslaved people of their freedom. This was 2 months after the effective conclusion of the Civil War, and even longer since President Abraham Lincoln had first signed the Emancipation Proclamation.
And when they learned they were free, they started celebrating, and we've been celebrating ever since.
Initial celebrations centered around educating former slaves of their voting rights, but now include cookouts, parades, church services, and musical performances.
For me, and I think for many communities of Black people, it's a time to really commemorate those ancestors who survived slavery, right? Because if they had not endured, we would not be here.
Juneteenth became a federal holiday in 2021.
All right.
All 50 states and the District of Columbia recognize Juneteenth as a holiday or observance, and nearly half of the country has designated Juneteenth as a permanent, paid or legal holiday. It's an acknowledgement that some say helps move Americans forward toward unity and understanding.
It's a remembrance, but it is also a celebration of where we've come from, but certainly how we're moving forward. As the niece of Martin Luther King Jr., this is certainly a highlight because our family has been on the front lines of freedom, fighting for freedom, justice, and equality. Happy Juneteenth.
And that is why we celebrate freedom. There's always so much history. We do have a list of all of the things that you can do to celebrate Juneteenth available right now on AtlantaNewsFirst.com and on the free Atlanta News First app. Make it a great Thursday. Whether you're working today, you have the day off, whatever it may be, just make it a great one. It's one of those days where we just get to take a moment and reflect on how far we've come, and also see where we're working and what was still the work that has to be done across our country and really across our globe at this point. So thank you so much for spending some time with us here on the First Alert Desk. I'm Brooks Baptiste again, and we'll see you back here on Atlanta News First at noon.